So I did something a little bit different this week slash last week as well. And I just straight up tried React. I tried React out. I'm just messing around with it. And I had this idea in my head. And I was like, the Mac OS like web version. Unfortunately, I forget who made that. We had him on our show and everything as well. Name escapes me immediately. But anyway, unfortunately, sorry, I will link that. Do you remember, Mike?
Puru?
Peru, that's it.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Peru. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I thought that was a cool project. I don't want to copy him and I don't want to like make Windows necessarily, but I am a Windows purist, which I'm sure some people will be like, that's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm a Windows purist. And I thought, what other Microsoft based UI iconic and legacy now gone actually? And that's the Xbox 360 blades. And so I thought it'd be cool to make a web version of the Xbox 360 blades, something that I used to use as a younger guy and also something that I remember and people really enjoyed, and a cool project that I could make with just a front end, like just the UI itself, and then actually go ahead and make like I could pull in data if I really wanted to. I could pull in game news and things like that to fill in the dashboard. And so I thought, okay, I want to try this. I haven't built this thing. I have a very simple skeleton, and we'll get into that. But my whole point was, can AI actually teach me React through project-based learning? So this is an experiment. I am new to React, first time using it, short of watching a tutorial like 5+ years ago. And so that's that. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go and check us out on that Patreon, leave a review rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. And if you don't want to learn with AI, you want to learn from real instructors, you can do so on Scrimba and get up to 20% off their Scrimba Pro plan using our link, scrimba.com/links/HTML all the things. Full details will be in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com. And remember that we are also powered by Code Rabbit. They give you the AI they give you the power of AI code reviews to help cut your code review time in half. Check out the link in the show notes and episode description to net yourself a 14-day free trial with no credit card needed and just a 2-click sign up with a GitHub or GitLab account. And so, Mike, I didn't tell you about this before we started at all. This is just something I did randomly. It's not like I have a finished product to surprise you with or anything. But how do you think this went before we jump into this? Like, how do you think this? And remember, I'm new. And I'm not telling it to build it for me. I'm telling it to teach me. I think it went.
So was this you talking to ChatGPT?
Yes. So that's a very good first point. I'm not using Cursor or anything. I'm using VS Code. I am using GitHub and that for version control. And then I'm using just ChatGPT. That's the one I'm most familiar with. And I have I don't know what plan it is, but one of the paid plans on there because they've added some since.
Okay. So my guess is that you got stuff working. I think you definitely got stuff working. I don't know if it was the blades template. Like I doubt you got the whole thing working because your goal is more learning than actually getting it done. I think if your goal was getting it done, I think you would have actually got it done. But the fact that you're trying to learn, and I know you spent how long, like 2 to 4 hours on this or something like that in total?
About 2 to 4 hours. And it is learning based. So like I want to be clear, like I'm asking the bot questions. And if I don't understand a concept, I'm not glazing over it. I'm trying to actually get in there. So could I have progressed a lot faster? Yes, absolutely. I could have just got the bot to vibe code it, but that's not the point here. The point here is for me to go in here. Also, full disclaimer, I'm a little like I use JavaScript, but like I'm a little rusty. Like I more so use JavaScript to complement or enhance like things like Elementor and other things that our clients use, because that's where the money is for us right now, Elementor and Webflow and things. And so there was a few questions where I was like, why is this not working like this and blah, blah, blah. And it was because I just didn't understand or forgot a JavaScript concept kind of thing. But hey, that's good here though, because one of the things I've struggled with, if you listen to this show or if you've listened to past episodes, is that I struggle with the line between like, where does JavaScript end and like React begin? And that always drives me up the wall. And so it's good that this thing can discern it. Okay. So I'll give you, the show notes are huge. Okay. And I'm going to give you just a rundown of that if you're interested. So I have a point form summary and we're going to mostly cover that. These are things that we actually built and I asked it questions and it explained to me and things like that. And it's all just quick point form. And that's what I'll be mostly doing for this like audio show, because we'll have discussions based on that. However, I got the AI to generate me a AI kind of React learning plan based upon what we had done together, and it's quite detailed. And so I just copied and pasted that. Like full disclosure, that's from ChatGPT. I'm going to put that in the show notes if you're interested, because there's like little I don't know if I want to say code snippets, but there's like little specific things like, hey, we set up blades.map to render components dynamically. And so there's a bit more detail in there. Hey, we're building UI infrastructure architecture and things and all that. And then there's a kind of a future plan as well, like a summary of what's next. And I'm not going to get like super into each thing. This is an audio show. This is not let's type with Matt show. But I'll just give a overall impression right off the hop here. I was actually pretty impressed so far. Actually, I want to say that what I've generated so far absolutely does not look like the Xbox 360 blades at all. And that's because I am doing concept learning. Actually, I was going to text you, Mike. I was talking to Copilot about something completely unrelated. And I asked it to explain something to me. And again, so completely unrelated. And it explained it, but it didn't explain it the way I liked it to do that. So I said, okay, Copilot, explain it to me this way. And it said, hey, here's an explanation. I think because you're precise or something like that, it was like, because you're like methodical and precise, I think you would actually like this really long answer. Do you want me to give you this really long answer? And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's right. That's what I want. I want to understand what the heck it is I'm doing. And again, this was completely unrelated. I don't even know if it was work related, but it was just something that stood out to me. And so I thought, okay, like I've been using this ChatGPT for a while now. So it has like lots of memories from me and things like that. So what I did was I kicked it off and I started a project within ChatGPT. And then inside of a project, you used to, although I think they got rid of it, you used to be able to just set like project parameters inside the project. That little blurb or that little text box is gone. And so it's just a list of chats. And so I started a chat and I explained what I wanted. And very first thing here is that giving it a lot of detail helps a lot. And I've learned this throughout my time with ChatGPT. So I did not mess up my prompt the first time, like at all. I like explained exactly like this is what I want to build. This is what's going on. I want to learn. I want to use React. I want to get started now. I'm on Windows. I have the Linux subsystem installed, like telling it about my environment roughly. Told it that the only thing I missed was it was like, oh, let's get the Git repo going. And I already did. I just did that preemptively. I probably should have told it that. Point of the matter is if you're trying to do something like this to like set the tone, it's like really good or like best in my opinion to have a really detailed prompt. Spend about 5 minutes giving it this prompt. And then, like I said, I only had one small correction, which was, oh shoot, I forgot about the GitHub thing. So no big deal. Everything's good. And I got it to get going. So what I did was I called the repo Xbox 360 Blades Web just for now. And it initialized with Vite. And the very first thing I start asking it's okay, like I understand that Vite is like this kind of a program where I can get started. It's like the spiritual successor or replacement for Webpack. I generally understand what it is, but give me the rundown because I only ever use this thing as like a template, like a quick, oh, I want to use so-and-so CSS tool. They have a way to install via Vite. So that's the way to do it. So I'm like, all right, give me an explanation of Vite. It gave me a pretty good explanation of that. And then I said, okay, what are we generally doing here? Are we using the Svelte plus Svelte kit? So like the full stack? So in React, it'll be Next.js and React. So I was like, what are we doing here? Let's get a vibe here. Like, what are we building? And it laid it out and it said, I think that we should be doing React first. And then we could potentially add some server stuff later. And I explained to it that I'm totally fine with static data for the moment, but down the road, I may want to add some things. Like maybe I'll pull in public gamertag details to make it look like a real gamertag, or maybe I'll change the UI slightly and it'll be more like a 360 Blades theme, but it'll have game news or whatever. Like I want to potentially play with this. And I was like, how difficult is this going to be? Like, should we be starting right off the hop? Should we be starting with Next.js in there? And it was persistent. It's like, we totally can, but we probably shouldn't. We probably shouldn't because we want you to understand React first. And it mentions some things like you clearly understand server infrastructure in a general level. So because it has my memories, right? The things I've talked to it about over the year. It said, hey, like you're not a beginner with servers. So let's more or less kick this off with just let's build the UI. And it actually even broke the UI into multiple things as well. So it broke it down into a kind of a project philosophy, which was we're gonna build the UI with no interaction. We're then gonna add some interactivity, which is more the React side of things, of course, and then we'll add data kind of thing. And what it was trying to do is it was trying to, and it told me this, it was trying to teach me React through small, manageable steps. Oh, adding like 400,000 things. It's not, hey, this is your first time using use state, but also we're going to connect to this API for the first time. So hold up, hang on. How do we like that now that's two loaded concepts and two loaded things. And this is where it started me.
Yeah, I'm just going to interject here a little bit because it's a really interesting concept that it actually went against the norm. And I understand why it would do that for this particular instance because you're asking it specifically as an educational platform. So what I mean by that is if you go to the React docs, not the Next.js docs, the React docs, it will actually recommend against the Vite and React approach. Like they tell you like, hey, don't do this if you're going to be putting anything into production. Do it. Then our recommendation is actually just go Next.js and then make it like a SPA, and then it'll work exactly the same as React, but it'll have the capabilities of Next.js and the router and stuff like that. But that's specific to like, hey, if you want production, you did not specify that. You specifically said, hey, I want to learn this in as small increments as possible. I don't know how this works.
I didn't
And
actually
the
tell
AI
it that. It decided that.
it decided
The
that. Okay.
increments.
Even better. But like it decided that and then it acted on it to the point where it was able to give you I do believe that this is a better method for learning it. Now, some people will disagree with me. I want to make that clear. Is I've heard this argument being made that you should just jump straight into Next.js, et cetera, et cetera. Now, for some people, sure, but for Matt specifically, I would probably recommend the same thing where he should first learn the fundamental React just so he understands what a front-end framework is. Because Next.js is part front-end framework, but not a front-end framework. And where I would push Matt into just React is because he likes to understand the concepts in segmented forms, right? So like he was mentioning, he likes to understand, hey, what's the separation between JavaScript and React? That's really important for Matt, important for myself too, actually. And this was a way for him to iterate on that and go like a step in and understand, hey, this is React. After he does this project, I can guarantee you when he picks up Next.js, it's not going to be an issue because he's going to know where React is in Next.js. And then he's going to understand that there is a server-side component to it. And then there's other add-ons on top of that. Like it's not just server-side. It's like routers and state management and stuff like that. There's other things to Next.js, but he would not have known that if he would have just jumped into Next.js without having to constantly query and ask, hey, is this React or is this like Next.js? That would have been a little bit annoying. So from a learning perspective, I understand. The data part is also interesting, but I also understand it. Like they said, hey, don't worry about it. We'll figure out the data later. Now, like usually it would be like, oh, it's data. You need to pull data in from the backend. But that's not really the case. If it's an open API that doesn't require any authentication, you can absolutely pull data from the front end and you can learn that data pulling mechanism. And that's how I learned it personally. I learned to pull data. I learned to use APIs on the front end before I learned anything about the back end. And so that, again, is an interesting approach because it goes against the norm a little bit where people are like, you should learn the back end right away to learn data and then learn how to pass data from the back end to the front end. I get it. But the reality is that if you're incrementally learning, I think this is the better approach. So I'm fascinated by how it got to this method of learning because it sounds exactly how not only I would recommend to you, but it's also how I learned React and Vue.js and all that. So super interesting.
It's a very human interaction I'm having with it as well. Like it'll say things like create React app is basically dead and Vite is so this is something where maybe this is like a little wrong. It was like Vite is the way to go here. Now maybe it's because we're specifically doing just React. We're not getting Next.js mixed in. If I was like, yo, we need Next.js, because it did allude just in its texting to me, obviously, that it was like, oh, if you want to have the back end already installed, we can go that route. And it sounded like to me, if I read into it a little bit, which could be wrong, but if I read into it a little bit, it sounds like it was like, hey, let's like have a different approach altogether. Because I feel like the majority of our time is going to be spent making this, Xbox 360 blades look like the Xbox 360 blades and React, if you will, like the 360 blades. And then we can mess with pulling in data and things like that, especially since a lot of it's just going to be silly. Like I'm not doing any sort of auth I'm not doing any sort of serious stuff. If I pull in any data, it'll be like a public API or maybe, I don't know, maybe a scrape or something. I just don't know that stuff yet. And that's not, I'm not here to make the 360 blades at the end of the day. It's just a motivation to learn with like learn a little bit of React at the end of the day. So we started, and this is where things make sense, but I have a problem with it. I'll lay out an analogy here. Oh, it started doing iterations, and it was starting to explain those iterations to me. So, very first thing we do, we more or less check that React is working. Totally makes sense. Make sure the dev server is running. Also makes a lot of sense. And as we go, it starts giving me versions. It's like, hey, okay, let's try this. If it shows this text, that means React is working and the server is running, so that's good. It's, oh, okay, cool. Things like that. Then it gives me an actual sort of, I'm going to call it a React build, like an iteration that's actually has some React stuff. And it had use state in there, which as far as I understand it is React. Now I want to be clear, I'm new to this, so I'm probably going to mess some of this up. If
It
you're like,
is.
Matt, you're an idiot, you're right. I'm brand new to this. I'm like, okay, what is this? Like, how does this work? And it's, oh, you're managing dynamic values. And in our case, we're managing the active blade. So if you don't know, what this blades thing I'm talking about is, it literally is just like different screens on an Xbox 360. It was the launch UI. So basically it was like one screen or one blade was like the games. You want to go over to entertainment, there's an entertainment one. Or you want to go over to the settings, there's a settings one, and things like that. And so what it basically we ended up with was like, okay, here's an area below a set of 4 buttons. And when you click on the 4 buttons, like if I click on the first one, the text at the bottom changes to say blade 1 or whatever. Click on the blade 2, it shows blade 2. So we got some interactivity there. And then it was showing me some generating UI from arrays. So it's okay, each of these blades should be in an array. We want to use .map for list rendering and things like that. And I've used .map in the past, so like whatever, we messed around there. I believe that's just JavaScript.
That's
If
right.
again, this is where I start to. But anyway, so like this is how we went, and I'll give a rundown of the iterations because it was all muddy there. So we start with a simple UI placeholder, more or less, to check if it's working. Mention that, no big deal. We replace those placeholders, just the random text that was like, hi there, just whatever. We replace that placeholders with basic components, and it starts to explain to me a little bit of what components are and things. And I have worked with ChatGPT with Svelte, so I think it picked up on that because we glazed over that. Also because understood it once it was like, here's components in the context, excuse me, of React. It like made sense to me pretty well right away. It's okay, I get it. Like I've done this before. I've even done it in Vue.js before. So like it's not that big of a deal to me. And what we did was we slowly improved the structure, right? We were like, okay, let's build the buttons. Okay, let's add this, let's add that. And we would keep like testing. I would observe. It would give me a rundown too. So it added extra comments, it was over commenting, obviously, because it's a learning exercise, but it was also commenting to me just in the chat itself. This is my problem though, is this felt like a video game tutorial. If you've ever played a concept game or a complex game, excuse me, a lot of mechanics are available to you right out of the gate. So if you're not a gamer, I'll give you an explanation. So some games will have a tutorial that in various styles last like a fairly long time, throwing you a ton of data. So maybe throughout the first hour of the game, it's click of this button to do this. Now click this button. Now click this button. It's guiding you through. Or another style is they'll just give you these huge kind of like window pop-ups that give you just a brick of text to read. And it's like, there's this concept and everything that you need to know to break it down. Here's this next concept and everything you need to know to bring it down. And it'll do 10, 15, 20, 50 of these things, depending on how complex the game is. Problem with that is that the human brain, at least mine, does not retain all that information. And so what ends up happening here, the bots, hey, do you understand everything we've gone through? Iteration 1, let's say. Is everything cool? I'm like, yeah. It's all right. Here's iteration 2. Replace all your code with this. And it gives me this huge block of code. And it's all right, copy and paste this in now. So I do it. I go and I test it. It's working. I can see visually there's a difference. And each one like looks quite different. So that's easily done. And each time I do an iteration, it didn't tell me to do this, but I was pushing to GitHub. So I was able to have, okay, version 1 is iteration 1, version 2, things like that, using version control. And I got to like the third or fourth one, I want to say, and I just realized I was like, if you took me now and you were like, Matt, explain use state or explain this dot map and on whatever, I was able to read what I had done. But here's the thing is I didn't really do it. The bot did it. And this is where I think a big conversation comes in is because it felt like that game tutorial where it's here's this big brick of code. Read it, read the explanation the bot's giving me, and ask it questions. I would ask it questions. I don't understand what this means. And I would ask it for visualizations. I'm like, I'm a visual guy, and it understood that in some cases. Again, it knows me. Give me some visualizations. Compare it to cars, compare it to roads, compare it to something simple so I can visualize it and then I can apply it and then extrapolate. I'm better at extrapolating than the initial understanding. That's just how I learned. And that's the way it is. And so my issue is, and maybe it's not an issue, is that I can read the React code that it generated with its guidance. And I understand the concepts that we've covered. For the most part, in terms of React, we've more or less installed it, got it working, used Vite, okay, got all that going, talked about React, talked about an experimental bundler thing during the setup, whatever. We decided not to do that. Throughout this whole thing, like I've been summarizing it here on this show, I've been asking a lot of questions. This is a couple hours, 2-3 hours now, maybe even 4 hours, back and forth, having a lot of questions because I like to understand what the heck is going on. And I ended on use state, and I understand what use state is and that, but that's where I ended, just scratching that surface of actually using React. But again, it's one of these things where I struggle now with. I could easily tell the bot, hey, I was done for the day. I need to restart my dev server. How do I do that? It'll tell me. And then it's okay, let's continue from where we were. And it knows exactly where we were because I'm in the same chat. I'm in the same project within ChatGPT and away we go. My issue still is that it's giving me a block of code. I'm copying, I'm pasting, I'm reading, and then it's okay, next thing. So, okay, so here's the issue. And like, we'll discuss this. It's throwing a lot at me, but I don't know how else it would do it. So I'm not trying to criticize so much as I'm identifying a problem. Maybe it's a problem with me. I don't know. The other thing that I noticed in this too is that I don't know how much of the React stuff I would write. Like I've worked with Svelte, I've worked with Vue, and a lot of it's like scaffolding or things that I wasn't in the particular projects I was involved in. I built a bunch of Vue components for you, Mike, a number of years ago, and I wasn't supposed to touch anything else. Just like, hey, I need this UI built quickly, and I went and ripped apart like 15 things. I built you a bunch of UI components real quick because I'm fast at that. And so, like, the question at that point is, to me, it's okay. Like, I didn't touch much of that scaffolding, but I was using Vue and I was using some dynamic stuff. I certainly was using components, but it's just like I don't know whether again I'm trying to dive too deep or whether it's what we've heard from many guests on the show where they're like, just code a bunch, just code a bunch. But we're in the era right now where like AI is a very efficient way to learn. And it's okay, maybe I'll stop this experiment in terms of the AI part and I'll go and I'll just read a bunch of React. But then I think about it and I'm like, they're just going to give me code snippets. I'm going to put them in and so this is my issue where I'm like, okay, is this just the next generation of learning? And I'm looking into this too much because A, I'm on a podcast about it, and B, because I am a person that likes to understand the backbone of things.
Okay,
This,
so
yeah, please weigh in because I'm just
yeah.
at that point. I'm at this apex right now.
I can absolutely weigh in. I think I have a lot of thoughts on this, but from the high level, I think yes, what everyone is saying that you have to just jump in and code is the correct next approach. So what the AI learning does is it gives you a more curated base to get you to understand the concepts to a certain degree. Like you said, you're reading code, you're understanding it, that's great. You're understanding use state, that's great. But at the essence of it, and you've pointed this out, is like you're not using it. Like you're not writing the code. So therefore, like you feel like you can read it, but you can't write it. And that's the truth. Like you're stating the truth. Like you can't write it until you actually write it. So the problem is that you have to now take that knowledge, put a blank sheet of paper, put a blank thing, a blank project, and follow the steps that you did before without looking at them too much. Refer back to them as you need to. Try to do it yourself. Do something slightly different. So you built this dashboard thing, build a nav bar. You like nav bars. And try to do it yourself, right? Componentize the buttons, et cetera, et cetera. And when you run into issues, because you will run into issues, because you'll be like, oh, I did this slightly differently. that's when you refer either back to your notes or you ask AI about when you run into a roadblock. This roadblock thing is super, super important to understand. How I learned to code was I would literally have a blank thing, and I'd be like, what do I do now? And then I would Google it. Be like, how do I start a stealth project? And then it would show me an article about how to start a stealth project. I would start following the steps. Eventually, during the following of those steps, I would start to understand it, and I would follow the steps, and I would start to build, and then I would build until I reached another roadblock, another wall. And I would consistently, like every time I reached the wall, I would start to look at reference material. I would start to dive into videos. I would like before AI, I would have to look at probably 15 different sources for one project at least. Like either a video, like the docs, a random blog that might not be great, a random, just anything like Stack Overflow, GitHub issues. Like I was looking all over the place. Right now, my approach would be the same, but I would just go to AI probably first because it has the context of everything that I just mentioned. And I would ask very direct questions. And during those asking of questions, you'll start to learn. And again, you're taking the question, you're asking what to do, and then you would put it into your code editor, whatever you can, you would start to understand because you're not just copy pasting big blocks. Now you're probably copy pasting much smaller blocks. And that's essentially what we were doing before, like with Stack Overflow. And then you might be adjusting those smaller blocks a little bit. So it's a little bit different than before because AI will be
I
able
will
to,
just stop you there.
yeah.
It's not doing that. Like iteration one, here's a big block. Here's my explanation. Here's the over commented code. Paste it in there, see what's different. Okay, what's different? Okay, and then if I continue to read between the bot and look at the React whatever that's running, I can see and read and understand. But then iteration two is literally here's another delete everything we've done. Okay, let's now paste this on top. So it's okay, like it's another whole slide, if you
So
will.
what you were doing before was like researching up, like this AI step that you did is like understanding the basics. It's not building. What I'm saying now is like the next step would be building, and then that's where you will have to do the more prompt. You'll have to ask for smaller things. You will be asking for smaller things naturally, because again, you're gonna take the information that you learned. It's not gonna be perfect because, like you said, it's not like perfectly sitting in your brain because you read it once. It just doesn't work that way. But it's
Right,
probably enough to at least get you started, and
right.
that's all you need. So again, spin up another project on your own. Don't query AI specifically how to do that unless you don't remember a certain command, obviously. If you're asking for a specific command, that's fine. Don't ask it to spin up another project from scratch
Because that's
and
just
tell you how
following an
to do it.
instruction manual.
Yeah,
Like, I've only done those commands once, so
yeah,
I don't remember them, to be clear.
yeah. So that's the thing. Like you just need to take the next step, which is coding, which is absolutely coding. Now, this is where the nuance comes in. And this is where everything falls apart a little bit for me. If I had AI when I was first starting out, there's probably no way I would understand the concepts the way I do now. And that's
Right.
because I'm one of those people that will try to figure out the shortest way to the path. I'll take the shortcuts.
Take the shortcut to the end of the journey at the end of the
Correct.
day.
I will do that. And the shortcut for me before was Stack Overflow. The shortcut for me before was Googling. The shortcut for me before was looking at a template. Like that was the shortcut, right? If I didn't want to do that, I would just be looking at docs and be trying to figure out with docs and how to do it. It would take me a longer time. I would probably understand it better, but I didn't want to do that. So I took shortcuts, right? Now we call them short, like people might say that they're not shortcuts, but they are shortcuts. Absolutely. They're shortcuts. If I had AI, I would be doing the same thing. And honestly, I would probably just have cursor open and just be coding with cursor at this point. And I would not be as good of a developer because of it. I think the people that will become the good developers now that actually understand the code are people that are okay, are good with the grind, are okay with not taking the deep shortcuts, are good with doing what you're doing, Matt, which is going one layer, like understanding, and then jumping into the code and actually trying to code and understand what you're doing in the code. The people that do that are going to understand the code. The people that just go into cursor and just start to query cursor, and again, I would probably be one of those people. I'll be honest. Like I would probably be one of those people, and I don't know how valuable that'll be 5 to 10 years down the line. I don't know. Maybe it will be valuable. Who knows? But I think you being one of those people that can go a bit deeper, that has that ability to like, again, wants to understand the core concepts a little bit more. I think that's what's going to separate the people that will make it in development, because you're still going to use AI, right? You're still going to use this better platform and stuff like that. But once you start understanding what you're doing, you're going to understand how to use AI a little bit better for that. And you'll naturally come to a point where you're like, okay, I understand this React stuff. I'm just going to get Cursor to build it for me. But at least I understand it enough to be able to read it now. And then you're
Certainly.
going to use it. That's how you should do it, in my opinion. Like, you should get to a point where you can like pretty much understand what Cursor is doing from the top to bottom for whatever you're building, and then use the tool available for you to build it as fast as possible.
It's a good point because I'm on, I don't know, iteration 3 or 4 or something. I don't know which iteration now because I've actually talked quite a bit with the bot. And if I go to the next step, I'm like, okay, cool. Like I understand that this is use state or whatever, but it feels I'm almost reading the Coles notes
Yep.
of the book, if you will. And that's an interesting concept. And it is one of those things that I struggled with because I am, like you said, a person that wants to dive deeper. But my one struggle was, hey, am I the fool who's using a horse instead of a car? Am I the guy who, that's old Matt, don't understand it, just go, you understand generally, and I've already scraped at the surface enough by talking about use state for 10 minutes, 15 minutes with the bot, talking about .map because it's been a while, right? Going in and having that conversation about, hey, let's just revisit this. I know generally what this is, but let's revisit this. And my struggle is, okay, have I already stalled enough where I should be like, okay, let's get going, let's get these Xbox 360 blades going. And that's how people are going to be coding. And that is one major struggle and where I stopped, and for good reason. Because you're 100% right. I'll have to ask it how to start the project again because I, again, used those commands one time, where to do that. And then I'm like, okay, let's build something similar. At the very least, using the same concepts. Like, I don't care about the gradient colors
Correct.
and stuff because I've done CSS to death. But it's as long as I can get 4 buttons, click it, and then another UI changes per, it says blade 1, 2, 3, 4. That is as far conceptually as we've gotten so far, which sounds so simple, but it's just I can't do that without the bot's help. And I don't even know where to start really. Gotta be like, okay, use state. Okay. I understand I'm supposed to use state here. I understand that my oil needs to be changed. That's great because I don't know how to change it. It's like that, right? Where it's that concept. So it's interesting that you said that. I'm interested, like it's cool to me the first thing that flashes into my brain is we used to have this business class in high school, and what the teacher would do is he would teach a lesson, but then he would go and make us highlight, I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but he would highlight certain things in the textbook and be like, okay, I actually want you to verbatim type these out. Like type this out, type that out, have this in this structure, and then I want you to later read it. So now we've heard it, we've quote unquote wrote it in a structured note that was applicable to what we're learning in the class. And then, which was honestly kind of plagiarism because we just stole that book, but parts of that book. And then we would have at that point structured notes because obviously I leave the class. A lot of that stuff leaves my head, but I'm lukewarm to it. And then I can get red hot with it if I read it over and over again over the course of the semester.
Yeah. And that's a really good approach. That's the 3-layer approach that's going to help a lot of people retain information. I would do a similar thing for you. I would do it in stages. So you've hit a stage and you'll know when you hit this stage where you're like, okay, this is becoming too much for me. Build. When you hit that stage, start building. Start using the concept that you're learning. Ask it questions, all the questions you can possibly ask, but get something going on a page that uses the concept that you've learned, right? Once you understand it to a certain degree, you don't have to be an expert. Once you understand that stuff to a certain degree, like you said, you have a few buttons on the page that change state, use state to a certain degree to change something up on the page. You're good. Move on to the next concept. Move on, and then do the same thing with the next concept, and the same thing with the next concept. Sometimes you'll combine concepts because you'll be like, oh, this is too simple for me. Let's go on to the next one. Then I'll combine the two and I'll try to build something on top of them. And I would do that until you get to a point where you're like, okay, we can build something pretty complex here. Like we can do an interactive UI, right? You have enough information to build an interactive UI. And then I would have whatever idea you have in your head, and I would just try to build it. And that's the third stage, right? Like the first stage, learn the concept. Second stage, apply that information on small incremental parts, easy to digest, easy to build. Third stage, take a big chunk of learning and try to actually build something with it, like an actual thing. And then that 3 stages will solidify, I guarantee you will solidify it enough for you to be like, okay, I understand this stuff now.
So I have a logistics question for you, but I want to cover a summary of what's next in the bot's lesson because it laid it out for me. And then I'll ask the question. So right now, just for context, I have one repo with this stuff in there. I'm doing versions per iteration, more or less. That's what I'm doing. So I've explained where I'm at, right? Basic buttons, you click it. There's some reactivity where like some text says, you're on blade 1, you're on blade 2, you're on blade 3. And I think it like highlights the blade or something. Very simple concept, that type of thing. So these are the steps that I have not done. And this is a summary of what is next. And I asked the bot for this list, to be clear. So it's a series of, it looks like 6 or 7 bullet points here. It says add left or right navigation with smooth navigations, which matches what the blades were, left and right. Okay. Next thing is build a clean component hierarchy. That sounds good because I like logistics a lot. I like playing SimCity. Content for each blade. Introduce simple dynamic data, excuse me. And then optionally, this is the stuff I discussed with the bot, optionally add backend logic later. And then, of course, add polish like sound, micro animations, and focus movement, which is something I asked it too, because I said the sound is so iconic. It'd be so cool if I could hook up an Xbox controller and be like, all the classic, it's a 360s blade dashboard, right? It's just a proof of concept kind of thing. So I've had that conversation with it. This is my logistics question. To reiterate, I have one repo doing all this. If I were to do what you said, which I agree with, which is, okay, I'm at step 3 or 4 if you include the setup. Realistically, I'm at like iteration 1 of the UI, maybe iteration 2, whatever. I'll stop and try to get back to where I'm at least conceptually. Do I try to do that in this repo, or do I just do this randomly not in a repo and have this bot just run rampant with this repo as I build, I don't know, locally, because who cares if I lose it? And just because I don't want to, because the thing I'm imagining is the bot will be like, hey, like this is different now. And I'm like, oh, but I broke that. And now it doesn't know I did something. And the lesson will be all over the place and I'll be all over the place. And then it'll be a big freaking mess.
I would have 2 separate repos.
2 separates. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, 2 separates. One where the bot is doing its own thing, where you can mess around if you want, whatever, like the blades repo. And then I would have the separate repo for you to just really screw around with. Maybe you don't even care about setting up Git. That's fine on that. Like you just literally, again, you're going from ground up, but you're working in an isolated environment away from the bot.
And I'm just trying to understand the concepts.
Questions. Yeah, you can ask specific questions in that repo for the bot to answer specifically if you run into a wall. But for the most part, the bot wouldn't be, you wouldn't be copy pasting the whole entire file into the bot. You would be copy pasting chunks.
So for some of the concepts, I Googled them just as an example. So this is like this is building on what you said them. Because I was just like, oh, you know what? Like use state, this thing explained it to me 3-4 times. Give me some more examples. I like examples. So I Googled it and I went right to the React documentation and it explained some things. And I understood about 75% of it, let's say. There were some things in there where it's like, don't do it if you do this. And I'm like, I don't know what this or that is. Okay, whatever. I'll bump into that when I do. Understood everything that was like the basics of use state. And it, of course, has a list of all the sort of use state, this, that, all these things that React can do, all the methods or functions or whatever you want to call them, all the different things that React can do. And I was like, okay, like I've done this before with MATLAB, right? Where like MATLAB, I needed some advanced knowledge of that for school in the past. We didn't have that advanced of lessons. And so I just went down the documentation, understood. So I was like, okay, this is some good documentation. I can easily refer to this. I guess my question is, though, is I did that, but then I went back and it was Google. So it gave me an AI overview and I wanted some more examples still. And so I got the AI there, Gemini, I went into the deeper AI mode or whatever out of the summary. And I decided to talk to it about giving more explanations and things. Do you think that for this like custom, it's just me doing it, this might be ridiculous, but do you think I should talk to another bot that doesn't have the context of what I'm doing so that it's not, hey, this is like that thing we're building over there, Matt, what are you doing?
You could. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with just asking the same context. The only thing that I will say is that context eventually degrades the more you talk to it. Maybe they've solved this. I doubt it, but maybe not polluting that context might be a good idea for the most part. And then also getting, again, an explanation in a different way might also solidify the concept for you. So there could be some benefit of you doing that. I think it's fine if you do that. I constantly use multiple models for what I'm doing. I think that's the way to go moving forward. Like you shouldn't lock yourself into one model, especially now.
And I don't want cursor because I don't want autocomplete. Like right now, I'm trying to do that writing stage of the learning. Sure. So I understand somebody in the audience is like, Matt, use cursor. I'm intentionally avoiding autocomplete. And I understand the Copilot's there and GitHub Copilot specifically. GitHub Copilot's been like, yo, man, I could do it. Get out of here. Don't ask me.
You can turn it off. Yeah,
you know, turn it off. I did for this, I believe, on one of my computers. But
cool.
This is very interesting. Because I hate learning. This is gonna sound weird. I hate learning, which is a really bad trait, but this has been pretty fun. This has been pretty okay. Like I have something where it's talking to me in context, which is huge, I think. And I like that you're adding this human element of, yo, you got to start writing this stuff down and actually start coding. And you're like, you're right. Like what I've been doing is reading I haven't been writing it. It's the same idea as like when we learn French, like in Canada, we have to learn French up into and including grade 9. Like it might be grade 6 to grade 9, something like that. It may have changed. We write it a lot and we do a lot of the linguistics on paper of like how to conjugate and things. And there's a little bit of that pronunciation. But then they decided, okay, everybody at grade 7 or 8 or something, you guys just have to speak French in the class. We've never done this before. We've only been writing. And so I can write it to the teacher and show her a note. And it is French of, hey, I don't understand this or whatever, right? I can write a pretty complex sentence, but then you're just like, all right, Matt, you have to say that verbally. And that's what happened to our whole class. And it was just like, we haven't done this. So now I guess no one's going to talk in this whole class because you're not allowed to speak English. You have to speak French, but no one's ever done that. And so it was like, and so I don't want to be the guy that like has read a bunch of code that was written, but not written by me. Like I'm not coding, I'm just guiding. I
Yeah.
don't want to enter that same sort of like principle. If you agree with how the French was taught in Canada, you agree with it. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it because I don't know how to teach a language. My point is I don't want that same feeling because I felt like a fool. Like,
So
yeah.
the unfortunate reality of where we're at right now with coding, and this is something I really struggled with, I'll be honest. I talked about it on the podcast several times. I have this like really steep uphill downhill relationship with AI. It's mostly been uphill for the last little while because I've been able to conquer it. But I do constantly have that feeling where I'm like just reading code now. I write honestly very little code these days. Like I'm probably at around 10%, where
Oh, really?
90% of
Okay.
it, yeah, where 90% of it is written by AI and 10% of it I write myself, just like minor adjustments here and there, copy pasting some structure that I've used before and stuff like that. And that's tough because I have that same feeling that you're having where I'm like, I'm just reading code. Do I really know how to write it? And the honest answer is, yeah, I'm probably worse at writing code now than I was a year ago. If I had to sit down with a blank sheet of paper or a blank IDE and I was asked to write some code, like I'll be worse than I was a year ago. That is true. Like it's a true statement. But what I've realized is like having the ability to read code and review code and adjust code is a completely separate skill that I was never really trained on too well. And that's something that I've been really focusing on, like hard. And it's been tough. Like reading, like reviewing code is actually very difficult. And being able to, again, learn how to use the tools, the AI tools, in a way that has it be more incremental, has it be like possible to review code. Like I don't know if you've experienced this, but there's this massive difference when you have a pull request open, which is when someone wants to like add a change to your project, they create a pull request and you
Yep.
see the difference in the code. So what they've added, what they've removed, what they've changed versus what was there before. There's a huge difference when that pull request is like 1 or 2 files with like 100 lines, right? To review and read the code, and 30 files with 3,000 lines.
Of
Like
course.
the reality is like I can't properly review with it. Like I could test it, but I can't properly review 3,000 lines of code in any normal amount of time,
I was gonna say
right?
within a normal amount of time, yeah. Like
Correct.
you
Yeah.
would be that would be your project for a month.
Yeah, like whatever. It would just take me way too much time. So for the most part, when a review like that comes up, because it does happen in my job where I have to review like 3,000 lines of code, that's hey, I'm just going to spin this up, make sure that the functionality that you said is working. I'll give it a fast pass to make sure they're not doing anything like really wrong, referencing an environment file in a front end file, like whatever, environment variable in a front end file, whatever. I'll have like my initial pass, but for the most part, I can't review this. And so I just approve it after I do those things. Whereas with a 100 line change with 3 files, I can go in there and I can give some really good feedback and be like, hey, you can do this more efficiently. You can do this there. And it's the same thing with AI. And it's the same like skill that I'm learning right now. And the skill that you'll probably have to learn as well is like being accepting the fact that you're probably going to write a lot less code now and
Yeah. Okay.
building on top of that the ability to review that code really well and prompt the AI so it has smaller incremental updates that you can actually review properly. Because again, the AI can give you 3,000 line reviews and you're not going to review them properly, just not going
Right.
to do it. But if you can prompt the AI to do it in incremental steps, then you can build a really robust, sophisticated application that's like secure and everything, almost fully with AI. But it has been reviewed and tested and tried and true by a seasoned engineer. So this is the problem right now is like you are going to be writing code. And I think that's one of the most important aspect. Like you need to learn this stuff. So you probably will be writing code. Right. But you will have to accept that at some point you're going to have to almost give that up and go back to reading code.
I see where you're at though, because like I write a lot of JavaScript. But here's the thing: I said I was rusty, and the reason why I'm rusty is because I shouldn't say I write a lot of JavaScript. I manipulate the vanilla abilities of page builders and plugins with a fair bit of front end code. For example, I've taken like the pagination or pagination, whatever, of Webflow and made it like a fully dynamic experience with multiple page numbers listed at the end, with truncated dot depending on how many pages, with arrows and all these things. And even though the pagination of Webflow is rather customizable, that what I would in which I just described was not possible, and I did that with JavaScript. I do a lot of stuff like that, so I am coding. I'm using ifs and loops and arrays and all these things. You're 100% right. We now do a lot of AI where I'm like, I want to do this in Webflow, blah, blah, blah. And the thing will be like, I don't know how to plug into your thing. And I understand how it's supposed to plug in, what it's supposed to be selecting. Does it need an ID? Does it need a class? Does it need another wrapper? And that's because I have all that prior knowledge. And so that is why I'm rusty at the JavaScript stuff, because I am doing more and more of that stuff with AI. And I do go through and I do rip a lot of garbage out. There's a lot of garbage that does show up 100%. And the only reason why I know it's garbage is because I've done it before. The thing, the React thing that it's generating me now for this 360 blades, it could be garbage. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know. If I came on here and I was like, yo, man, like I'm using use state, and you're like, use state has been gone for 5 years, I'd be like, I guess I'm doing it wrong.
It would be the same thing. It would be the same thing with you were learning from like Google and stuff like that too, though.
Correct.
Or a tutorial, right? Yeah. I would argue that a modern AI will definitely give you better results than you picking a random tutorial.
In general, I have had Gemini talk back to me once where I was like, "What are you doing? This syntax is wrong." And it was like, "Yeah, I'm using an older version." I said, "Don't do that. It's my version is completely valid and good today, so we're going to give you this." And it gave me the old syntax. I was like, "I have given you an instruction. Also, don't use old garbage. What are you talking about?" But just so that it's imperfect, but the Stack Overflow snippets we were writing were imperfect. Imperfect in not only that we had to adapt them to our own projects, so you had less context, but also imperfect in that the person that wrote the actual concepts that they were using may have been inefficient or just wrong. And Mike, I don't know if you remember this, like a while ago, I was like messing around with Svelte, followed a tutorial. This was before AI, right before AI, and it was the wrong freaking version. I did the whole thing at the wrong version. I had no idea. And it was like, all right, just restart that. But again, like that's because I didn't know. And that wasn't an AI problem. That wasn't like someone saying, oh, AI is bad or whatever. It was like, no, man, like I legitimately didn't know and followed the wrong human written tutorial. So there's imperfections in the human stuff as well as in the AI stuff. But this has been really interesting. This has been really enlightening. And I get exactly what you're saying. And I think I'm going to try that now. I'm going to try to get to the stage that includes the use state and just try to get some buttons to work or something, just real rough on a piece of, I keep saying a piece of paper, but it's not a piece of paper, just like a local, not even repo. Just see if I can't get it going, get Vite to spin me up and just see if I can't mess around with that. And that would be really cool, I think, as a good first step. I don't know if I'll have any more check-ins on this show about this. Like maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. I was playing, but it's been interesting. I feel like this is like a firsthand. This is the only time I could have recorded this episode because it's the only time I would ever have been exposed to React for the first time actually using it like this. Sure, again, short of a YouTube video I watched like 10 years ago or whatever it was. I'm no longer a first timer and now never will be. So I figured this was the time to record this and almost reflect in a way.
I would also love if the audience were to come back and tell us like, hey, this is what we want. Because I can guarantee you if we get a bunch of feedback saying, hey, we want Matt to create more of these kinds of episodes where he goes deeper into React and talks about the pain points or the things that worked, we will create them, right? If there's silence, probably we might not, but I can guarantee you if there's some feedback, we will definitely create more of these kinds of episodes.
Yeah, and you can leave comments on our YouTube version of this, which will be video, on our Spotify, which is audio and video, or wherever. Podbean, if you're listening on Podbean, you can add comments there. You can add us on the various social medias, of course, but let us know if you want to see more of this, because this is like a journey for me, and I catalog it or continue it. I'm not saying depends on you, but if you really want to see it, it depends on you.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And it wouldn't be a Matt episode if I didn't end with an analogy. And I'll end with the analogy or the visualization that I'm learning to golf, as Mike knows, and I'm learning the core concepts of golf. One of my friends who is just naturally really good will get stuck sometimes. He'll be like, I don't know why this thing's doing this. And I'll have a myriad of tools or suggestions based upon base level knowledge on how to help him. And it will slowly but surely help him. Not always, but generally. And he messaged me the other day and he said, if you just keep doing what you're doing and keep learning the core concept, I feel like you're a slow burner and you're going to suddenly start beating all of us. Now, I don't know if that's true. I'm not saying that I'm a good golfer, bad golfer, whatever. I am saying I'm a beginner, and learning the core concept has allowed me to, when I'm out there, not be like, something's not working and I don't know what's going on. I'll be like, probably my head or probably my feet, or try this, try that. I have a understanding of the tools that are in my toolbox and understand which tool does what, rather than just a bunch of tips and tricks, which a lot of golfers use, which is totally valid. It just doesn't work for me. So I tried that for 3 years and it was a total disaster, and a complete and utter disaster. There's my visualization comparison, whatever you want to call it. But that's it. Remember that that we have a big old show note here if you want to see the bot giving you a summary. I told ChatGPT to do it. There's a couple of like areas where I put Matt's note, hey, this is where this is. So in case anybody's just reading it, please go and check that out if you're interested. And again, give us feedback if you want to see more of this. But I think it is time to end. I don't know about you, Mike.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a good one.
If you'd like to support episodes like this, you can do so on HTML, all the things. Do so on Patreon, at patreon.com/HTML, all the things, messed up my own order. Check out the tiers and give that a go. And many thanks to our $3 tier patrons: Tim from the Web Hacker on thewebhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se, Syntaxify from the HTML All the Things Discord server, and Stacy Mosteler from the website swoonworthydesigns.com. And remember that we also have a 20% up to 20% off Scrimba affiliate link if you want to get their Scrimba Pro plan. Full details will be in the show notes on htmlallthethings.com, and that link will be available there as well. It will be in the show description. Remember that we're powered by CodeRabbit. You can get the power of AI code reviews to help cut your code review time in half. Check out the link in the show notes and episode description to net yourself a 14-day free trial with no credit card needed and just a 2-click sign up with a GitHub or GitLab account. And last but not least, we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, contributing author on htmlallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughtxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or review in the platform that you're listening to this on. And this outro, which we don't really have an outro in some versions. We're signing off. We're out of here. We're out of here.
Bye.
Goodbye.